The St. Lawrence moves beneath the tug at 4 knots, -18 on the water, not yet dawn. Ice sits along both shores, not the thin, new stuff that forms overnight and cracks underfoot like glass. This is consolidated winter ice, grey-white under the docklights, pressing against the channel's edge in slabs nearly 1/2 metre thick, the kind that doesn't shift unless something with real mass behind it comes at it directly. The ocean tundra works it without ceremony. Her hull, 36 metres, stem to stern, 13 metres in the beam, or built to ice class 1A SFS, rides up over the surface and then comes down hard. The weight does most of it. 6,000 kilowatts of diesel-electric power does the rest. Forward, ride up, come down, the ice fractures in a long, clean line. The pieces drift toward the south bank in the current. Exhaust rises into the cold air and flattens immediately. There is no wind this morning. That is one small mercy. On the bridge, nobody speaks. The captain watches the surface ahead. The duty engineer monitors the load. And the nightmate stands at the port window with a coffee going cold in his hand. What they are watching isn't drama. It is a job. One they have done every January and February on this river. The port of Montreal handles roughly 35 million tons of cargo in a year: grain, petroleum, containers, roll-on vehicles. In 2024 alone, more than 2,000 cargo ships came through. Most of that traffic moves along a shipping corridor that has to be fought for, kilometre by kilometre, against a river that freezes every winter without consulting anyone's schedule. When the frost settles hard over Lac Saint-Pierre and the coastal pack ice starts building along the Richelieu corridor, the ice-breaking tugs don't wait. They go out ahead of the cargo ships, beside them, sometimes directly under the bows of bulk carriers that cannot slow for ice the way a tug can. This is what it looks like to keep Canada's busiest inland ports running when the river decides otherwise. The corridor between Quebec City and Montreal is among the most demanding stretches of freshwater navigation on the continent. The St. Lawrence is a river, which means it freezes differently than saltwater and more completely. By mid-January, ice at Lac Saint-Pierre can run from shore to shore across the river's widest point. The shipping channel is kept open not by temperature, but by sustained effort, by the ice-breaking tugs working ahead of inbound vessels, by the Canadian Coast Guard fleet managing the broader navigation corridor, and by the harbour pilots who know every bend and shoal in this river from decades of experience. The Ocean Tundra and her sister vessel, the Ocean Tiger, are products of that reality. Both were designed by Robert Allen Limited, the Vancouver naval architecture firm. Both were built at Ocean Industries' own shipyard on Îles aux Coudres, a small island in the St. Lawrence, downstream from Quebec City, where residents have been building wooden riverboats since the 18th century. These vessels come from a place that has been shaping and launching working boats into this river for 300 years. But before we continue, if this kind of work is worth watching to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Every video here is built around real Canadian maritime operations, the vessels, the routes, the crews, and the conditions they work in. If that matters to you, the subscribe button is how you tell us, and we want to hear from you. Did you grow up near the water in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, BC, the Maritimes, or somewhere along the St. Lawrence? Did a family member work the fishing fleets, the Coast Guard, a cargo run, a harbour tug? Did you spend time on these vessels yourself? Leave it in the comments. People watching this channel know these waters. We want to hear from them. Now, back to the vessel. The Ocean Tundra and Ocean Tiger are classified as azimuth stern drive tugs, ASD configuration, which means their propulsion units rotate a full 360 degrees. In harbour work, this matters more than raw power alone. A conventional tug can push or pull, These vessels can push, pull, brake and pivot simultaneously. In an ice-narrowed channel where the margin between a bulk carrier's hull and a submerged sandbar might be measured in less than 2 meters of underkeel clearance, that kind of maneuverability is what keeps cargo moving and hulls intact. The Tundra 3600 hull form was developed specifically for operations where icebreaking and escort work had to coexist in the same vessel. The forward hull is reinforced with ice-class steel plating designed to resist lateral ice pressure. The underwater bow profile is shaped to ride up onto the ice surface and use the vessel's own weight to crack and submerge the sheet ahead. This is not the same technique a full icebreaker uses. A dedicated icebreaker attacks at speed. These tugs work slower, more precisely, in confined harbour approaches and channel sections where running speed is never an option. Bollard pull on both vessels sits at roughly 100 tons, the sustained force they can exert at the end of a tow line under full power. On the open St. Lawrence in a straight tow, that number may be rarely needed at its maximum. In a harbour entrance, bracing a loaded tanker against a crosswind while ice consolidates against the dock face, 100 tons of bollard pull is the difference between a controlled berth and a vessel that is no longer where it is supposed to be. The MAK diesel engines driving the propulsion systems also power the onboard firefighting equipment. Both vessels carry FIFI 1 class fire suppression systems, 3 monitors capable of delivering more than 20,000 gallons of seawater per minute combined. Ocean Group conducts annual joint training exercises with municipal fire units at the Port of Quebec. These tugs are not single-purpose machines. On any given winter shift, a crew might break ice on a docking approach, assist a tanker to berth, and stand ready as the port's first marine fire suppression response, all before the morning watch ends. January on the St. Lawrence is a different river than the one that carries grain ships upstream in August. The freshwater stretches above Quebec City, freeze first and freeze hardest. Lac Saint-Pierre, the wide, shallow broadening of the river between Sorel-Tracy and Trois-Rivières, roughly 50 kilometers from end to end, is where ice tends to consolidate most aggressively. Shore ice forms in early December. By mid-January, the main channel ice can be a foot or more thick. By late January, the Canadian Coast Guard's ice monitoring program is tracking thickness and ice type across the full navigation corridor. New ice, grey ice, consolidated first-year ice, and in the worst of winters, pressure ice pushed against the channel banks. The ice-breaking tugs operate in the transit lanes directly ahead of incoming and outgoing vessels. Their mandate is not the same as the Coast Guard's. At the Coast Guard vessels, including the CCGS Mamilosa and the hovercraft fleet that works the smaller tributaries, are tasked with preventing ice jams on the broader river and clearing navigation hazards across the corridor. The tug's mandate is more immediate. Keep the docking approach clear for the specific vessel they are escorting and hold that clearance long enough for the ship to make port without being pushed against the bank. Ice drift on the St. Lawrence does not stop because a channel has been cleared. The river runs with current even in January, and the current moves ice. A docking approach cleared at 0300 can be closed again by 0600 if the tug stands down. The ice-breaking cycle is not a single pass, but a sustained patrol, working the same section of river hour after hour while a ship is inbound, then resetting and working it again for the next one. The captains who run this route in winter know the ice the way a pilot knows an approach. They know how it forms differently on the deep channel side versus the shallows. They know the sound the hull makes when the ice is solid versus when it is beginning to rot and break up from below.
Knowledge that no chart can carry. It is learned on the water in the cold over many seasons.
Ocean Group has been operating harbour tugs out of Quebec City since the 1960s. It is not a company that arrived on this river recently. The people running these operations grew up alongside the fleet, or alongside people who worked it before them. There are captains on the Winter St. Lawrence now whose fathers stood watch on smaller tugs in the same harbours, working the same shipping channels before the Tundra class existed. A captain who has worked the Winter River for more than 2 decades will tell you the technical demands are manageable. And what makes the hard shifts hard is the accumulation of variables. An inbound tanker with a full load and a deep draft, ice consolidating on the port side of the approach, a cross-current running stronger than the forecast suggested, and visibility falling in river fog at 0200. No single one of those conditions is unworkable. Together they require a quality of sustained attention that leaves a person tired in a way that sleep doesn't fully fix. The specific challenge that comes up most often in docking operations is this. A vessel arriving at the port of Trois-Rivières or at the Montreal terminal facilities cannot berth if there is a continuous ice sheet between its hull and the dock face. The tug works in the narrow space between them, sometimes as little as 10 meters, driving forward, backing, turning, clearing the ice in repeated passes while the cargo ship holds position in the channel. It requires knowing this tug's turning radius at 3 knots. It requires reading the ice to know whether it will fracture cleanly or push back. And it requires a steady hand that comes only from having made that move many times before in conditions not much better than tonight's. When the docking is complete and the lines are fast and the gangway goes down, the tug backs off. No ceremony. The cargo ship settles against the dock and its work begins. The tug heads back toward open water. There is already another ship on the radar. The winter navigation season on the St. Lawrence corridor runs from roughly December through March. In a hard year, frost arriving early, sustained cold through January and February, a late breakup, the ice-breaking work can stretch into April. In a mild year, the ice is lighter, the patrol runs shorter, but the need does not disappear. There are no winters without ice on this river, not yet. The port of Montreal is the largest inland port in Canada by cargo volume on the east coast. Here's a gateway connecting North American producers to ocean shipping lanes that reach more than 140 countries. What moves through it in a year keeps supply chains running across Quebec, Ontario, and the Canadian interior. The ice-breaking tugs are the mechanism that holds that connection open when the season works against it. The river does not care about cargo schedules. It freezes when the temperature decides, and it thaws when it is ready. Everything in between. The pre-dawn patrol runs, the escort work, but the docking clearances on approaches that ice over every night exists because of the crews aboard these vessels. 2 tugs, a river that has been freezing for as long as anyone can document, and the decision, made again every winter, to go out and meet it. The ice will be back tomorrow. The tugs will go out to meet it. If this is the kind of maritime work you want to keep following, subscribe to the channel. There are more vessels, more routes, and more operations still to document. And if you have a connection to what you just watched, a parent who ran supply to a remote community, a grandparent who worked the Grand Banks, someone who crewed an icebreaker or worked a Harbour tug through 40 Canadian winters, tell us in the comments. What did they operate? Where did they work? What do you remember them saying about the job? The people who actually worked these waters have stories that don't appear in any logbook. We want to hear them.